Hey lads, it's Sira. I hope you've all been well. I thought that I would try to do something a little bit different today, so I'm going to make a video about Monster Hunter. With that revolutionary bombshell out of the way, let's talk offensive skills. As anyone worth their salt will tell you, your Palette of Power will feature a mix of Crit Boost 3 and Weakness Exploit 3 with Expert 7, a pinch of Attack Boost and Agitator, nicely garnished with a finish of Master's Touch. Simple, straightforward, and easy to follow. And of course, I wouldn't be setting this all up with a moronic cooking analogy if there wasn't a wonderful exception to this rule that I've really been enjoying recently. A weapon that takes you to a mirror world where evade extender, slinger capacity, and even earplugs of all things are considered damage skills. Yep, it's going to be a Gunlance video. So why is Gunlance so far removed from traditional melee play? Well, the name should give you a bit of a clue with that whole, gun bit. Previously, in World, using the boomstick as a slapstick was the way to go, much like the aforementioned traditional style. However, since shelling has gotten astronomically more powerful in the expansion, it's here where most of our gaze lands. We'll start with the types of shells and the most optimal way to use each of them. Normal features the highest capacity of the three, with 6 shells using capacity boost, and gets a boost when firing off the whole clip in a full burst. Wide not only has the shortest range, but also the smallest magazine of the three, with only 3 shells. However, it does feature the highest damage single shell, and grants a boost to the powerful Wyvern fire. Finally, Long is the middle child of the family, with a clip size of 4, and has the most powerful charged shelling. The new Wormstake introduced with 5th gen is boosted by this shell type, however that's not worth talking about in favour of more recent additions. With that summary of shelling over and done with, onto the Iceborne changes. Not only did we get new levels of shelling, increasing the hitting power, we were also blessed with one new attack that is the single most powerful boost that any Gunlance can receive, in the form of the new Wormstake Blast. Jamming all of your slinger ammo into your weapon and subsequently into the monster leaves a landmine that bursts with every shell that lands near it. Between each shell type, the damage increase can be anywhere from a 50 to 90% increase on fixed damage alone. Now if you combine this with the new effectiveness of shelling in Master Rank, and we've got a potential snowball of damage that can tear through your target like a brick through glass. So that's the rundown of how each shot type works, and with this extra layer to consider when choosing your weapon, there's a chance that you may be a little bit overwhelmed. What skills should I bring? Which combo is most effective? What Gunlance works on what monster? Well then, let's make it nice and simple, just how I like it. First up is normal Gunlance. You want to fast track to your full burst with this shot type. The combo that I use is shell, into quick reload, then slam, and burst. It's slow, but very powerful. You can also substitute the first shell for a lateral poke, or even guard and then poke, but shelling just seems to work for me. Naturally, I shall be using a lot of the physical combo, investing into weakness exploit and critical boost, as well as blast or paralysis status, will make a significant difference in your hunt times. As the combo itself is slower and requires a lot of setup, knowing which matchups it works well against is a top priority, meaning that faster fights may not be the best for normal shells. Second to the plate is wide. Now if normal was a bit sluggish, wide is all about speed. Your combo will be alternating between poking and shelling to get the most out of the boosted single shells, and can be supplemented very nicely with an element appropriate Gunlance to build up the hunter's equivalent of tick damage. You have very low animation commitment, making this playstyle incredibly flexible. Critical skills shine here as well, so things such as weakness exploit and crit boost can make a massive difference. Finally, the odd one out. Long is a unique scenario in that you don't actually use the weapon in the slightest. Your combo is to charge your shells 4 times, and that's it. Naturally, this leaves a ton of space free for alternative skills, which is fortunate, since Focus appears as a new mandatory skills with these shells. Since you'll be doing nothing but charging, reducing those pedestrian charge times is much needed. You will also have the space to consider other options, such as more levels of evasion, guard, and so on. In summary, pack artillery, capacity boost and focused, and you will have maxed out the damage potential of your optimal combo with Long. We'll wrap up this basic segment here now with a final summary on skills. You'll always be running Artillery 5, as well as Capacity Boost and the Razor Sharp Charm. These are mandatory skills. Other skills to prioritise are Evade Extender, Evade Window 3 at minimum, and Slinger Capacity 3. That's right, your arm-mounted pea shooter is actually considered a damage boosting skill for Gunlance, as you'll be utilising slinger ammo for your Wormstake Blast. The more you can shove into the chamber of your lance, the longer the landmine lasts, meaning more augmented shell bursts, meaning more damage, meaning a deader monster. Silver Rathlos's arms give these skills outright at level 3 with some respectable slots, so it's something to consider. With regards to my personal preference, I use evasion skills simply because it has less recovery time than guarding. and it does seem as though a lot of Master Rank monsters deal mild knockback, even at guard 3 or even 5, so evading through attacks is going to do you a lot more good in the long term than just popping your shield up. Evade Extender toes the line between mandatory and preferred, however closing gaps to get to the Wormstake is so much easier, and it lets you put the smackdown on a monster faster, so it gets the thumbs up from me. A situational skill is Earplugs, in that it really shines with normal and long. It lets you guarantee a Wormstake at the start of the fight as long as your aim is good, and will allow normal to get a full burst in while the monster is busy screaming. Not needed, but it can be nice to have. Right, that's your shopping list for skills. Now let's move on to a rough bit of tech to consider. These are merely small adjustments to the playstyle that can really help you squeeze the most out of your Gunlance runs. Firstly, your Wormstake etiquette. Whilst it deals fixed damage, you should still be paying attention to the hit zone that you plug it into, especially stagger zones. Examples like this are the heads of smaller elders such as Teostra and Kushala, the limbs of fanged wyverns like Zinogre and Odogaron, and the legs of brute wyverns such as Anjanath or Banbaro. You can also circumvent the need for earplugs by timing the Wormstake loading animation with the monster's initial roar when first engaging, as you gain a guard point whilst continuing the animation, leading immediately into the stake attack. Do you need to make some distance or close a gap after an attack? Hold back on the stick during a back hop, as you'll gain additional distance. Combine this with Evade Extender for ridiculous results. Another distance closer is attacking whilst moving forward. If you mash or hold circle during this animation, you'll dash forward and cancel into a single or charged shell, respectively. It's very useful for keeping up the heat with long. Has the monster drawn back for the Clutch Claw stagger? Wait till the first movement of the head and then begin charging your Wyvern Fire. You should time it just as the monster comes back around to face you and get all 3 hits off on your desired body part. Finally, as the PC version of Iceborne has recently released, I thought I'd go over the Gunlancers to aim for in your grind, from early to mid to end game. We'll start with wide. Now unfortunately it only caps out in the base expansion at shot level 5, but first of all upgrading your Baroth Gunlance will give you wide 4 and then 5 after a couple of upgrades, with Awakened Paralysis being available. At mid-game, you'll want to look for Nagakuga, with a titanic 570 poison once awakened, and then onto Seething Basilgeuse with Purple Sharpness and Blast to boot. Finally, Ruin and Nergigante will be your best option at endgame until Rajang drops, as Django here gives us huge raw damage in wide 6. Ruiner's main pull is the wide 5 shot type, the absolutely ridiculous white sharpness, and the fact that it has very respectable raw as well. For normal Gunlance, you'll want to fast track to Jagras, as it gives normal 6 very early on at the final upgrade, with actually pretty decent stats. This can reasonably take you up to Shrieking Legiana, which will be your next normal Gunlance, at which point you should also begin to update your Pink Rathian Gunlance through the levels. At Master Rank 4 you may wish to go for the Acidic Glavenus Gunlance. Unfortunately, it has pretty terrible sharpness, and that's a main drawback for me, so I won't be including it in this list. However, once you're post Velkhana, you can look to Namiel, Velkhana itself, or even just hold off for Gold Rathian once you hit post game. Gold Rathian will be the strongest normal Gunlance you can make until Stygian Zinogre comes out, which will be the only craftable option with normal 7. Finally, Long Gunlance, as you'll really only be looking for sharpness and shelling level Viper Tobikadachi, which should be more than enough until you encounter Black Veil Valhazak. Black Veil's Gunlance is incredible. Massive white sharpness, 2 level 2 slots, and long level 6 make it the best option you can make until Safi Jiva rears its head. Speaking of the grown-up Jiva, it really does render a lot of these Gunlances irrelevant, if not all of them, by virtue of being able to include a Point of Zora set bonus on the weapon, and having all shot levels available to all elements for wide and normal. That said, if you are making a Safi Jiva Gunlance, I would use 2 sharpness mods, 1.5, 1.6, Zora Mastery, the shell selection of your choosing, and a space free for anything you fancy. You can thank me later. And now we come to the end of my thinly disguised Gunlance recruitment drive. I really would implore you to give it a whirl, as it's one of the most unique weapons in terms of set diversity, playstyle, and it can be incredibly powerful if used correctly. For those of you who stuck with me on this, thank you, you're great. I have these types of discussions over on my stream, so if that's your kind of thing, feel free to stop by sometime. Enjoy the Gunlance, lads, it's worth it. Be good to each other, and I'll see you later.